Hello, everybody. Hi, coaches. Good to see everybody tonight. Joel, I'm so glad you're here because you can talk a little bit about you speaking at the next First Wednesday. That'll be great. And if we can turn our cameras on, I always appreciate that. No problem, Hugo. I see your note there. Hi, Lindsay. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
And I'm going to apologize in advance. I have a little bit of a cold, so if you can hear me stuffy, I feel fine, but I just have a little bit of a cold that's going around. So we'll get started. People will drop in as they drop in, but I'm Gretchen Heido. This is First Wednesdays, and each of these calls is going to be recorded as it's recording now and uploaded onto my YouTube channel. It's not going to be edited. So if you prefer to keep your your camera off, you can. If you would rather not be recorded, then you can go on mute. That's no problem. But I just want to let everybody know that it is going to be recorded and that it will be shared on YouTube. And First Wednesdays was created because I really believe in helping coaches to be able to build their businesses. I want them to be able to have great ideas on what to do to earn a livable living and to be professional coaches. So that is how this group was created. It's kind of my give back to the coaching community. A lot of you are in other programs with me or have worked with me either currently or in the past. And I just love to be able to help coaches to learn how to flip that switch and to really think about different ways to earn income. And so tonight, one of the things that we are going to talk about is how to craft your signature speech. And let me just drop into the chat. Here's our handout for tonight. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. But when you have a signature speech and you are able to get in front of people, it is one more way that will help you to be able to potentially connect with clients. And what do I mean by that? We're all used to doing the one-on-one coaching model or group coaching, but when you can get in front of more people, it's a good way for people to trust you and for them to be able to decide if they want to work with you. And whenever we're doing that, it just gives you more of a dynamic space to be able to create some touch points with people. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight is how can you create the touch points? What needs to happen for you to be able to create your own signature speech? And we're going to go from there. So the first thing that I want to ask everybody is, how many of you already have a signature speech or a workshop? Just raise your hand, something that you work on. Okay, Joel does, Lindsay does, Brian kind of, Tamara kind of. Yeah. So I'd love it if you could unmute or just put in the chat, what is your current signature speech's title or your workshop title? Let's just start seeing some of these. And the thing to think about when you have a signature speech is what is something that you could really talk about easily. So if someone called me and said, "Hey, you're going to talk to a group of coaches in 15 minutes," I have a lot of different signature speeches that I could do. I could do anything on client creation. I could do one on how to create your signature speech, but you want to know what your go-tos are. And you'll see some of these go-tos that are here in the chat that we're seeing right now. And it's just nice to have this in, and I like tomorrow's word here, toolkit. It's nice to have a signature speech or a workshop in your toolkit because it helps you to be more versatile. people tend to work with us after they've had an experience of us. And when they come to a workshop or a signature speech, and you can create either with the handout that I gave you, one of the things that happens is it's a touch point. It makes it easier for them to trust you and to connect with you. So, anytime I'm going to have a group program, I like to invite people to some kind of a workshop first, where I take content from that program directly and help people to be able to kind of feel it, see it, try it out before they decide if it's something that they're interested in. And it makes it really easy then because it's less of a sale and more of an enrollment process as you go through working with people inside of a workshop or engaging them in your signature speak. If they like what they've heard, they might want more information. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Joel, I know that you speak a lot. Would you mind coming off of mute and just talking a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah. So like I put in the chat, the title is Leading with Depth, the Crucial Role of Cultural Humility. So I wrote a book about cultural humility. So I do a lot of, I can modify it, morph it, depending on who the audience is, and present the framework and how it applies to them. So it's been fun developing as I was writing the book. That's kind of I took that content I was writing and developed a anywhere from 75-minute to 3 hour workshop around cultural humility. What is it? How do you develop it for individual, organizational, and community change? And so, yeah, it's been fun. And then I have one for strengths, Gallup certified strengths coach. So I have one that I've developed for that. But primarily lately, it's been a lot of cultural humility, either keynoting or facilitating.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for you, what have you noticed when you hold a workshop or your speech? How do the participants end up engaging with you after?
Yeah, generally a lot of questions. The topic culture, what I've been noticing lately is that it can be, there's a lot of reflection involved. So I get follow up after the workshop because people need just time to process it and how they can integrate it. But generally it's depending on the audience. A lot of questions, a lot of engagement, and I've shared this with Gretchen, is I use it to get coaching connection calls. And so particularly around the topic of how do you develop cultural humility. And so I old fashioned clipboard with signups and time slots works better than the QR code I've found because people want to like anyway. So it's been really a lot of engagement, and then of course leading to potential book sales and or coaching engagements or additional workshops or facilitations.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Thank you so much, Joel. And the old school does work. That's the thing. When you pass around a clipboard, it's funny that people do sign up that way. So right now, you can use this worksheet later, but something that I want you to think about is if you already have a group program, or if there's an offer that you are wanting to create, what is that right now? And how could it turn into either a workshop or a signature speech? So, everyone just kind of think about that for yourselves. I have one that's called Leading Like a Woman in a Man's World. During International Women's Month, I do that one like 3 or 4 times because it's a catchy title. It was created just for International Women's Month, so that I know that it's one of those that like it will be picked up because of the title. And so what you're always thinking about is A, what can you talk about forever? B, when somebody comes into your workshop, your signature speech, what do you want to enroll them into next? So I always think about it that, okay, if someone comes to one of my workshops, there is a breadcrumb trail that leads them to the next offering. So that's what we're thinking of when we are creating this. Something to really think about with that offering is that your workshop or your signature speech is going to be a mini snapshot of something bigger. And so you want to think of the beginning, middle, and end point of the person that might come to this. So a lot of you have done my Stairway to Six program, or you're currently in it. That program is for coaches who would like to learn how to earn six figures. They want the how do I do it? They want the framework. They want to learn, what step do I take? What do I need to say? What do I need to do? So they come to me, they'd like to make more money. They would like to learn the process. They learn that in the middle, and by the end, they haven't usually made the six figures, but they are on their way to it because of what they have learned. So you want to think of, what is the problem that the people that might come to your speech or workshop are facing? So just take a minute and write it down for yourself. What is the problem that they're facing? Okay. Who wants to unmute? I'd love to hear this. What is the problem that the person who would come to your event is facing?
Sure.
Brian, Tamara.
The workshop, I mean, is finding your flow, which is really to an essence of looking at the mind, body, and spirit, and how you can kind of congeal all three together to find flow in your life. And the person is a sense of being stuck in one or more area. They don't know where. And so this uneasiness that comes with not flowing in one's life, that's the problem, but they can't articulate it and they don't know where to go.
That's it. Okay, so they're coming to you and you are bridging the gap between where they currently are and helping them to get to flow. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
And in the workshop, you'd give them some tips, some pointers, whatever it is to help them to do that, which could then lead them into maybe a coaching program with you.
Correct.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Tamara, what about you?
Mine is for high achievers, professionals who have harsh inner critics, struggle with imposter syndrome, perfectionism, which leads to overwork and burnout and paralysis from fear and missing out on opportunities.
There we go. And so when you think about that, they come to you, and I'm really hearing the burnout. Like when you said that, that was the word that it was like, oof. And so you're helping them to bridge the gap to learn how to not be as burnt out so that they don't miss out on opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for everyone, what I want you to see is kind of the beginning, middle, and end point. It's the client evolution story that you're going to do in a short amount of time. The great thing about this is when you have a good signature speech, it can turn into a workshop. It can turn into a 2-hour training. It can turn into a half-day training. It can turn into a 6-month program. It can turn into an individual coaching arrangement. It just depends on what the topic is and the breadcrumb trail that you're leaving. So having a good signature speech is a great business building tool to have in your belt. Because it's one of those things that, one, you can become known for as an expert in your field. And two, when people ask you, so what do? You can talk about how you help people to close this gap from, burnout to opportunity, whatever it might be, and that you have a workshop coming up that might be a good fit for them to come and check out. It's a nice intro. So let me pause here and just ask you, what are you already hearing in this? And I might need a little help today, you guys. My head is kind of stuffy. So if you'll unmute and just kind of help me out on this one today, that would be really, really lovely.
Well, it can be the foundation for everything, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
That's
way
it.
to give people exposure to the kind of coaching that you do, It's something that can be developed into bigger and bigger platforms as well.
That's right. And when we think of it like that, when we think of it as the bigger platform as well, this is the part that anytime you're thinking about your workshop, or your signature speech, it's really important to have the dot, dot, dot. I'm doing this because. So think of it for yourself right now. You all wrote down a challenge point for the way that your client might come to you. Think about the dot, dot, dot with that. They come to you, they go to the workshop, and your hope is that they do what next? It's good for you to know your pointer of they come to my workshop and then I want them to do what? So take a minute and just write that down. Oh, and thank you, Hugo. Yeah, it mirrors their emotional journey, stuck, striving, succeeding. Yes. Does everybody have an idea of where you want it to lead? Or is anyone stuck and needs some help? We could do a little spot coaching on this if it's helpful. Everyone good here? Okay. Here's something to think about with this offering of your signature speech or your signature workshop. This is an excellent way to get into corporations. It's an excellent way to be able to have people who maybe you would not have met in any other way intro you into larger audiences. So think of it as a bit of your business card that they get to experience. And from that, I'm always thinking, I like to think of a three-pronged approach when I come up with a workshop or a signature speech. I like to think of, and I kind of do a mind map with it, of what are all the things that this could become? Because it's usually not just one thing. If I'm able to take this into a corporation, what I'm hoping for is to get to coach a team out of it. That's where I want my dot, dot, dot to go. But another thing that it could be is maybe I coach an executive. That's okay too, because that still can end up leading to the team. Or maybe I get to coach a group of high achievers. But whenever I'm setting out to do a workshop or a speech, I write my goal and my intention down of what a win for me would be for that. That I will do this for your company for free, or I will come into your organization for free. If you can charge, charge. But a lot of times, sometimes these talks are either low fee or no fee. I will do it with the hope of, but make sure you have that hope of written down. Now, for some people, you don't have to do it for free. I know that Joel's getting a lot of paid opportunities right now with his speaking and has been. It's something that he's worked on for a long time. Lindsay as well. When I go to speak now too, I don't usually have to do it for free. But if it is a new organization, I'm not opposed to it. And I've been at this a long time. I'm getting ready to go and speak at a big conference in September. And when I go, they're giving me a free speaking spot and I get to coach 30 people while I'm there. Now, they're not going to pay me for it, but of those 30 people, they're all high achievers and leaders in different organizations that could lead to more business. If even 3 of them come on board and I get to coach their team, it's more than worth it. So I always look at the cost benefit ratio when I'm getting ready to do anything for free. And I think about what will I get in return and what is my roadmap for the client to follow. So let's unmute. Let's talk about your own roadmap. When you're hearing this, what's coming through for you?
It reminds me of just being really clear of what, I mean, I think you just said that, right? Being really clear on what it is you want and what your ask is, and not I mean, early on before I started really thinking about this, is I would offer just a bunch of stuff. And I wasn't clear about really one thing, one singular thing I wanted. So I confused people, right? Because they're like, do you want like, does he want me to buy the book? Does he want me to schedule a coaching session? What does he want? And so well, anyways, it's just a good reminder of giving, like, as I'm thinking about next week, and Lindsay and I have talked about this thing I have coming up, getting really clear. Like, I know who's in the room, so who's my audience, and then what is it I want them to do at the end in order for me to come back or go into their organizations and do more work.
That's right. And when you think about it, I like what you said there too about what are the chances, what is it that you want them to do to come back for more work? There's usually more than one option. And I'm sorry, you guys, I usually have someone else doing like all the tech stuff. This is the correct link for you to actually download a copy instead of changing my master copy. So my apologies for not being overly techy here, but I just redropped it. So if you could use that one instead, thank you. As you can see, I don't have my assist tonight. So, who else heard something in this? I'd love to hear what you're thinking about your own roadmap to where your workshop or signature speech could lead. Kate.
I think almost having, an aha moment in your workshop, but a part B. Like you lead to like this is how we could dig deeper, or this is where we could go next. Almost being clear on it to the group as well, so they would want to seek part B.
That's it. That's it. And so when you think about the seeking part B, there has to be something that is compelling enough to help them with that. And that's where, what is the problem? The stage that they're coming to you at. That's why that is so important to identify. And I like to call it, it's the exposure point. This is the exposure point. People come because something has been exposed in them, and that's what causes them to want to do more of that trail. Hugo, did I see your hand?
Yes. So for me, it's more of a patterns of interacting. So it's
Or
shaping a framework for me.
yeah, yeah. And say a little bit more about that. What kind of a framework?
So what I came up with was, for the beginning, it's more of a seeing what the pain point is, and then after what the turning point is, that's my middle, and then the end is more of the transformation. So where they land.
That's right. The where do they land? And then you think about from where they land, from your signature speech or workshop, where do they go from there to continue the work? What would your offering be? Is it that individual coaching? Is it something else? What is it that you would want them to do next? Now, here's something. Oh, Brian, go ahead. I saw your hand.
And this is more of a question. So
Sure.
I always look at, there's a lot of possibilities at the end point.
Yeah.
When do you start getting into this analysis paralysis of, well, I could do this and I could do this and I can do this. And then I get to the point where I'm just like, I almost overthink it. Well, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that could lead to a workshop. How did you kind of almost, do you narrow it down and say, okay, this is the one I will try, but I don't want to limit myself in terms of this process either.
Right. So this is a great question, and let me make sure I'm hearing it correctly. When you're thinking about where do they go next, it could be a lot of places that they could go next. So how do you not make it a smorgasbord, but it's like it's here or there? Is that what I'm hearing? And how did I
Yeah.
decide what it
How
was?
do I narrow it down?
How do
so
I
I'm
narrow
not,
it down? Yes. So most of the time when I'm going to do a workshop, it is to enroll into a larger group program, almost always. Whether I'm doing it in front of a corporation or I'm doing it for a certain group of people that I'm going to attract. I almost always have already pre-thought it out that, okay, this is because I'd like them to enroll in this 6-month program, this accelerator, this whatever it is. My second option is always, if they can't because of the dates, individual coaching. So those are the two buckets. Now, could it go a lot of other places? It could. I don't usually give more than one option. And with everyone at the end of a workshop or speech, there's the part where you say something like, if this was of interest to you, you can talk about your program, or you can say, I'd like to offer you 30 minutes to go deeper. Because I know that in a workshop like this, I didn't get to answer everybody's questions. I do have a program coming up. It starts on X date. We can talk about that opportunity as well. Does that make sense, Brian?
I get a very creative mind and I'm like, oh, I could see this. And I get in the fantasy land about where this next thing you know, and I'm like, all right, bring it back because I need just get the workshop done. I mean, kind of the point. So
Sometimes, though, it's really good to go big and creative and to see everything that's there and then to pull the best strands of all of it. So I wouldn't say to shut it down in the beginning. I'd say really open it all up and then, we'll coach and we'll talk about which thing you're going to do at what point. Yeah, really good. Something else for you all to think about is who is your actual audience? Different workshops and signature speeches can be tailored for different groups. So even though I have leading like a woman in a man's world, I could do that in my corporations if I wanted to. I can do that for women's events. I can do it to source a program that I have for women that's coming up. But you want to think about what is the actual audience that you're tailoring it to. So if I'm going to do something for coaches, I make sure that it can work in different formats. And it's something for you to think about. I do have some speeches and workshops that are only for teams. So I wouldn't try to do that with a group of coaches. I would take that to my HR folks to see if I can get in front of the teams that I would want to be able to serve. So you're really thinking about that, who is it? What kind of a company or organization? And one way to think about that is who's meaningful to me? Who is meaningful to me? Where do I like to work? Who are the people that it's important for me to help them in their world? Lindsay, will you unmute and talk a little bit about your different people that you like to help?
You know me well because that's my problem where I have multiple audiences. I have had a very similar, like one workshop that I have tailored for different groups, whether it's for women in corporate, but I talk to HR folks. That's like one of my signature key workshops, first generation professionals, and then mid-level managers to executives in the workplace. So that's been my struggle, like wanting to just share so much information to so many different audiences without tailoring it. And I feel like I have Brian's opposite problem where I'm like, I just want to give information, but I need to have something to convert from there. So
And is it,
multiple audiences for sure.
yeah. And how have you, because you've done a lot of work on this, talk a little bit about some of the ways that you have really decided which presentation you bring to which group.
Good question, because I feel like I'm still in the middle of it, depending on
You've done it
who
though.
brings me in. Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, I just have been getting laser focused on one audience at a time. Honestly, that's how I've been doing it right now. Like right now, my focus is HR. And the workshop actually brought people that weren't in HR, which was interesting. And getting really specific to solve a problem, to share the journey is going to resonate with audiences that go beyond who we think it might attract. So a lot of the same struggles that I talk about with HR, other folks are paying attention and saying, wait, I have similar struggles too, and I'm not in HR. So it's been really interesting to get laser focused and have an actual offering. So started a group coaching program for HR leaders as well, versus just doing a workshop with no continuation.
Good, good. Thank you for that, Lindsay. So after you've decided, what it is that you want to talk about, what their problem is, and what the transformation point will be, and you've decided, well, if I do that, where I'd like them to go is to this next thing, then you want to think about pricing. Okay, so with workshops, speeches, that sort of thing, there's a lot of ways to do it. When I do my 3-hour pre-Stairway to Six program and it's 3 hours taken directly from the program, that's a $99 workshop. The reason it's $99 is because the program itself is a $5,500 program. If someone can't pay the $99 for the workshop, they're probably not going to be able to pay $5,500 for a larger program. So your pricing, what you want to do is you want to kind of see, is this someone who's already committed? People who are willing to pay for a workshop are more committed to those than are more committed than those who aren't. And when you give something for free, yes, gifting is okay. There's some people that they're your current client, you used to work with them in the past, you'd really like them just to come, go ahead and gift it or gift it for 50% off, no problem. But when you're testing it out to see, is this going to be someone that will fit into my program? You're already working in your requirements of this is something that you're going to pay for by having them pay a fee to attend. So that's something to think about. And again, the only time that I will play with that is if it's a new corporation. You know, the first time that I worked with Universal, I did it for free, but then I got into Capitol Records and they had me in, because they own a lot of different things. I would go in and I would do a free workshop, and then they had me be in charge of their women's circles. And with those women's circles, there was a fee for that. But I knew that I would go and do my 55-minute spiel, you know, workshop where they all got something, and it was like the test for them to decide to bring me into their company. But I had already laid that out with the HR person that I'll come in and do this, but then my hope would be that we would run these circles for these women and that this is what the price would be. So you're thinking about the price, you're thinking about what would engage your audience, what is the right fee? So all of you take a minute and think about what it is that you want to offer for a workshop. What might the right fee be for you? Is it 29? Is it $9? Like what is it that would commit them at least enough for you to know that they might enroll to be an ongoing client? And Joel, I see your thinking face. What do you share what you're thinking here?
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to offer a workshop for college and university administrators who are getting ready for a job transition at a college or university. And I did this last year, and I'm doing it again because it led to two one-on-one coaching clients. So I charge 149. They get a workbook, they get a the Gallup Strengths code to take the strengths, and then they get one coaching session with me as a freebie, well, part of the price. So they get three things.
And then with that, though, the freebie part of the price, that's really to enroll them into working.
One-on-one coaching. Yeah, one-on-one
That's great.
coaching. Yeah. Mhm.
And the 149, it's enough of a fee to help them really be committed, but they get quite a bit of value for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, and yeah. And anyway, yes.
I like that. I like that. And I see your question here, Jen, that says, is the fee a percentage of what you would charge for the workshop or a larger program? It can be, or you can come up with an amount that you feel like is the right number. I've seen people do it either way. I've seen people do it that it's 10% of whatever it would be for the overall program. You know, you can do it in whatever way feels right for you. What I know though is that for me, I want to make sure that people are willing to invest even a little bit for them to come to a workshop in order for me to know that they're going to have money to invest in a larger program. Hope that answered your question. If you want to unmute, okay, I see the thumb. Great. Something to think about in your signature speech or workshop is the feelings. What we're doing is we are taking people on a ride, and we want to help them know that we relate with where they are. So something to think about is when they come, how do you think they feel about your topic? So usually when people come to Stairway to Six, they feel nervous about making money. They feel excited about making money. They feel like they don't know how to make money. Those are usually the top 3 feelings with my Stairway to Six program. So think about the start feelings that they come to you and their feeling state is what about your topic. Write those down. Everyone have some feelings? You have feelings right now? Good. So who can unmute? Just share a few of the feelings that your potential clients, your workshop signature speech participants might have when they come to your workshop about your topic. Hugo.
Frustration, disillusionment, uncertainty, overwhelmed, mixed feelings, and hope, fatigue, need for the validation.
Good, good. You really dug deep with the feelings, and I see in the chat, hopeful, intrigued, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Everyone wants a starting point with the feelings because what you want to do is during the session, you want to take them on a feeling journey. People buy their feelings. They buy things because of the promise that it will feel differently. So when I'm doing the leading like a woman in a man's world, women usually come and they're pissed off. They're frustrated. They feel like things are unfair. During the presentation, I teach them some hope. I help them to feel more like they're badass and really confident and what can they do. And I get them into a position of empowerment and action. So that's the feeling journey. And the way that you want to do it is you want to think of a good story that you can pull through. What is your pull through story? So for me, with the leading like a woman in a man's world, I teach them a bunch of stuff and whatever else, but I talk about how when I was in PR, I was in Texas and I was rolling out a PR campaign. It was a really highly priced PR campaign in front of the board of directors. And I was getting their buy-in, and it was very old school. And the white gentlemen around the table were not paying a lot of attention. And I tried to get buy-in and I asked a question, and one of them said, "Well, I'll do anything if you wear that dress." And I thought, wow, wow. And I had a choice in that moment. My choice was either I could say the thing that I wanted to say, which was, bad words, and to leave the room, or, you could freak out. Or what I did instead was I said, "That's really interesting, but I wonder if you'd like to get back on our topic of how we're going to create your return on investment." And it shut him down, and the room got back on track. But then at the end of my speech, when I do this workshop or I do this speech, I come out from behind the podium and I say, "And this is the dress that I was wearing." So you want to take people through a feeling journey so that at the end, they feel like they can do whatever the thing is too. So it's okay to get a little bit personal in your workshop or in your speech. You want the audience to know that you really understand them. Okay, so think of it for you. What is it that your audience would be struggling with? And usually it's good to come up with maybe 3 real pain points. What would they be struggling with that you can help them solve with their feelings? And here's a tip. You want them to first feel uncomfortable. Completely fine. We are looking for the uncomfortable point for them before we help them to get to the action point. We help them to get to the hope. We help them to get empowered. But first, we have to show what is uncomfortable. We need to expose that. So think about your own audience. What would make them uncomfortable? What feeling is it? What needs to be exposed? And please unmute if you have one. It's good. It's good for people to hear. I would love for people to do a little discussion on this. What needs to be exposed? Donna, you do a lot with these perimenopausal women. What would a feeling point be that needs to be exposed?
Good question. Just trying to pull one out.
I'm thinking, I mean, if you really think about it, for women at that stage, they feel out of control with their emotions, out of sync with their partners,
Yep.
like a terrorist has entered their body. They're mad about their weight, they're mad about their hormones, they feel betrayed. You have a lot of exposure points, spoken like someone maybe dealing with that right now, but there you
I
go.
have some anger ones. I'm just a
Anger.
little leery to go into that because there's the point of no return. If I can't pull them out of that, once I get the feelings journey, it's like,
Good.
whoa,
Yes, I like that you're bringing
that's
this.
my concern.
So in a workshop, you want to be able to dial it back. It needs to be a pain point that you touch, but that you can safely bring them back from.
Okay.
Really good point there. And think of
Okay.
your own personal story that you can weave in. That's the thing that makes people want to talk to you later. It's your own personal story. Lindsay, you have some good personal story about, first generation and all of that you really can weave in. Brian, you have some good stories. I know all of you have good stories. And so you want it to be a real human connection point. So let's say that I'm talking to a group of coaches like you. I'll talk about how if I'm doing a workshop, I'll talk about how in the beginning I was terrible at sales. I was trying to connect, close, coach all in 30 minutes, and I didn't understand why people weren't signing up. I was really kind of frustrated by it. So you want to show your own vulnerability without becoming undone, because at the end you need to show, and here's the end point. That's the hope. That's the transition. That's the sale. So let's pause there. What are you hearing in that?
What I took away is really the personal story and personal touch that interweaves with the workshop or interweaves with the messaging. Because I think you can articulate it, but if people would say, yeah, have you walked the walk, you've talked the talk, I mean, you know it better than I do, then they're more likely to participate or
Yes.
invest.
Yes, you got it. Who else? What are you hearing in that? Vulnerability, interest in coaching. Yes, you go.
Well, the part that occurred to me, building off of what Brian was saying, is also that there's hope, right? That you've figured out how to get beyond, and that there are ways you can share based on your own experience.
That's it. And that's the part, it's that transition piece that I know something about this. This further program engagement would teach you, help you, support you in this next part. And that's the piece that's important. Brian, were you raising your hand?
I have
Go
a
for it.
question on this.
Yeah.
So I talk about finding your flow. How honest can we be? Like, I go in it and I go out of it, and I'm almost exposing myself in the sense of like, it's never constant. I still struggle with this. I mean, is that like, I don't know how much I want to articulate that in terms of it, because then they're like, well, if you don't figure it out, why would I figure this out? But I also think there's something said about really being honest that, well, I know it, but I practice it more, which gets me through it a lot faster than I used to be.
So maybe there's a story, and this is really good, how vulnerable, how honest. Maybe there's a story where you can take them through where you weren't undone at the end, that it's like, hey, this is where I was blocked. This is how I got to my flow. And as a human, this is a lifelong process. But here's what it looks like when you begin, and here's where you can get to. Maybe there's something in a story like that, and you can tack on that, and this is something that I'm constantly achieving and working on. In my Break Free to Bold program for women, it has these 10 secret breaking stages. And I swear to you, every year when I run it, and I've done this work so many times, every year when I run it, I'm like, oh man, because there's always something that's going to go down in my life that's going to take these women through. And I do share, but it's a very vulnerable space and it's appropriate. You never want to be undone in the middle of it as the leader, but you can be going through it and showcasing how it might be used in real time. And that actually can be powerful. Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, and to your point, right, you have to be authentic. I think you have to also know your purpose for being vulnerable. If you're just being vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable for people to like, feel sorry for you, not that that's what
Yes,
you're doing, Brian, but you have to be clear for yourself what is the purpose, because if you're not, then it becomes like oversharing.
that's right.
And so, yeah, so like for me, people really appreciate that. I make myself vulnerable, even as a man of color who still struggles with microaggressions, bias, all those things. I still mess up, but I know that there's a better way to do things, and that's the through line is I pull that all the way through. So then I build a connection with the audience so they know, man, Joel still struggles with this, but he's figured out a way to work himself through that in order to come out better on the other end.
That's exactly it. Thank you for sharing that, Joel. As leaders, as the person in the front of the room, selective vulnerability is important, but it has to be for a reason. I'm a part of a group where there's a leader that cries often. And it's interesting to me. I don't really understand it. I don't think that that's a good way to lead. And I get that this person is just highly emotional, but it's not the selective vulnerability that makes me want to follow. If anything, it kind of turns me off and makes me makes me lack trust and like, can this person really lead in the way that we need to go? And so you need to make sure that you can stay together in the vulnerability. Now, once in a while, you'll see this with really good speakers. Sometimes they do get teary-eyed, that it's like, wow, okay, that hit me. And you can see that they're really in the moment, usually not in a workshop. This would be in a speech. And that's okay with you because you know that they're not going to be undone and start sobbing and, need like a therapist to show up on the spot. We're always being the leader. And that's the kind of vulnerability that does make people take note. And what you're looking for when you're doing a workshop or a speech is, do they want what you have? Do they want what you have? And it makes it really easy then about, is this person my next potential client? It's either a yes, a no, or not right now. Do they want what you have? If they don't, we don't spend a lot of time chasing them. Either the story resonated or it didn't. The worst workshops, and think about it, we've all been in them when we have to go to these like development and leadership things. The worst ones are the ones where there is no humanness in the room, where, it's just this person goes and presents this to a trillion different places. It's their whole job. They have their 3 workshops that they know, and they're hired over and over and over, but there's no real story in it. People are not engaged, and those are the trainings that lack focus and they lack the return on investment. People do not change from those trainings. People change when there's an emotional element that helps to pull them through. So you always want to be holding something, the beginning, middle, and end for them in that vision where they can see themselves. Let me pause there. What are you hearing in this? Is it sparking anything? What I'm wondering is, can you see how the emotional and story component is important? It's the main part of what gets you through the door beyond the workshop. So that's the piece that the worksheet will really help you with. Now, something else that I like to do during any kind of a workshop is I want them to take action during the workshop. And all of you have been to my workshops. I always say something like, be listening for the gem and where you're going to take action. Otherwise, this is just one more blah, blah, blah that you came to. But if you're not going to take action, nothing happens. So set them up in the beginning for what they're going to do at the end. Typically, I'll have people write something down like their intention for why they came. Then I want to ask them about their own struggle in regards to whatever the topic is. So all of them will have some kind of struggle, like write down your own biggest struggle. Then I have them write down something about how would your life be different if that struggle challenge were removed. Then I want them to look at how are they causing that struggle? Because we're the ones causing our own struggle every single time. And then you want them to connect to what motivates them personally. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's stability, maybe it's risk, maybe it's freedom, but have them write down a motivator. And then you want to think about what do you want them to leave feeling like? So for me, I want people to feel empowered and like they can do it. Whatever the it is for whatever signature speech I'm doing, they can do it. They can be a part of their own solution. That's really important. And then I ask them to write down what they're going to take action on in the next 24 hours. When you have that, what you've done is you've made it not just a speech or a workshop, you've helped them create their own personal roadmap to their success in whatever topic it was that you were talking about. And so it's like a mini version of whatever your longer version, your longer format would be. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. What are you wondering here? Ask me some questions that you might be wondering about when it comes to your workshop or signature speech.
I have one.
Yeah.
In the workshops that I have done, obviously there's a lot of emotions, things get very personal. And even though I can hold myself together, the ladies can sometimes unravel. And I can always get it back on track, but then you can get off topic, you can get off time, and it's trying to manage that. That's a concern for me. Like I think
Yeah.
usually if it's a smaller group, it's usually better because there's only so many people who can get off topic. So I was
So
wondering how to branch out.
one thing that you want to do is you want to have agreements at the beginning of any group. So if this is going to be a group workshop where you're worried about that getting out of hand, you just want to come up with, hey, I'm going to be a good keeper of the time. I might say things like laser, and that is just to get us back on track. It's not that I don't want to hear all of the details, but for the purpose of us all having mutual learning, we might need to move on. So you need to be a good manager of the time and come up with group agreements that you verbally say for everyone to be able to commit to.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. It does. It usually takes a few rounds, but yeah.
And then you want to keep your own frame, that
Yeah.
you keep it going. It's okay for people to have tears if that's something that comes up, and you keep it going. So we don't stop and, take a long time with each person.
Right.
People get to have their feelings, and we keep it going.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who else? What are you wondering?
Oh, short of a workshop would you do, like time-wise, to do what you feel like you need to do?
The shortest workshop I'll do is an hour.
Okay.
Shortest signature speech, 20 minutes. And that's really short, but I've done it when you get the 20-minute slot. It's like, yeah, I can do it. It's not my favorite, but sure, I can do it.
Quick question on something you said earlier about when you do the free workshop, you do explicitly tell them, and I hope this will lead to this to the HR lead, or how do you plant that seed to,
Yeah.
yes,
So
I'll
if
do it free now, but not in the
Yep.
future.
When I'm working with HR and they ask me like, hey, a lot of them do lunch and learns. Can you come in and do a lunch and learn either on Zoom or in person? And I'll say yes. And I always ask what their budget is for that. And many times there's no budget. It's just what you have to do to be able to get in. I'll let them know I'm happy to do it, but let's talk about the bigger picture for coaching. And that's where I want to get in there and I want to find out what is the company struggling with right now? What's at risk because of this struggle? What have they already tried? What would be helpful? And then I'll talk to them about, hey, listen, this can be something that I do, but what I'd like is I'd like to be able to coach your whoever it is, their leaders, their execs, their team. And a lot of times the workshop's a good intro for that. So I look at it as call it like a three-leg chair that the workshop is the first thing I do to get in. Second thing would be talk to that team lead or whoever their executive is. And then the third thing would be to coach their group or their team. And I let them know that I'm willing to do it in phases. Most of the time, though, I do want to get paid for that. But if you're brand new at it or you're trying to get in, getting in front of a corporation, go ahead and do it for free if you need to. And this is the only time you guys ever hear me say, do it for free. I'm always the one that says, get paid. Okay, let's hear a few takeaways of what you learned from tonight. And then I'm so glad that Joel came because he is our speaker in April, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about what he's going to be speaking on. But what were some takeaways that you learned about, creating your own signature speech or workshop? What'd you get?
I think for me, I'm good at the beginning and capturing the audience through the middle, but I really need to work on my close. Like, what's the feeling I want them to walk away with? How can I really thread the story throughout and have clear action items afterwards for conversion?
Great. Who else? What'd you get?
I'm taking away that I have to be much more involved in myself in the story.
Good. Who else? What'd you get?
Finding the problem, the structure, and then ending with call to action.
Really good. I love that. One more.
I would say keeping it tighter and definitely call to action.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And use that worksheet. It's going to help. It'll be something that when you look at it, it's going to make sense and it's going to help you with a lot of what we've talked about. Joel, give us a little sneak peek of what you're going to be talking about in April.
Yeah, well, thank Gretchen for giving me the opportunity. So what I'm going to be doing is the title is Bridging the Gap, Overcoming Bias to Connect and Create Clients. And so I'll be talking about what happens when bias shows up in your coaching so that you are aware of what's happening, or if you commit a microaggression, how do you move through that? One, to continue to build rapport with your client and build that trust. It's super necessary, but then also to create clients, because we mess up, we'll mess up. Everyone messes up, right? The mistakes. That if you're able to catch yourself and check your biases and have a plan so it happens, then it'll create that space for your client to feel good about working with you, and refer as well as continue to come to you, right? So yeah, so I'll unpack that at the next Wednesday.
Yeah, and the
Next
thing
Wednesday.
about this, and thank you for that, Joel, the thing that I think is so important for all of us to remember too is that we all have biases constantly. It's human, it's part of being human. And to learn how to move through those so that you really can be fully present and listening to your client. Because when you have a bias that comes up, man, you might start fixing or consulting or not listening or judging or whatever it might be. And we have biases about everything. It's just the way that it goes. And so for Joel to come and really teach us about that and what we can do differently, it's going to help you with your own client creation. It was great seeing you all tonight. My head is a little bit fuzzy. I hope that you got something from this. And as always, it was good to see you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in April. Take good care, everybody.